Hey guys, so as promised, we're gonna talk about the Sino hybrids today for a bit. So last week we had Sino for the future dinos, along with Anki and Rex, and this week we got Sinoceratops again with Stegoceratops and Stygimoloch, I believe. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's those two. So this is how we're gonna look at them. So we're gonna look at the hybrids, Utahsino and Allosino, as well as the hybrids of those, the super hybrids, the unique super hybrids, which are Utarinex and Thoradolosaur. We're gonna look at how they perform individually, how they perform in a team, what team builds you could go with, I guess, kind of, and how which one is a better place to spend your resources on. So, first, let's talk a bit about Sinoceratops. Sinoceratops got a decent buff this time. It has its stunning impact changed into greater stunning impact, so it now has two 75% stun moves. So it's not a bad standalone dino. That's not a hybrid. It's an epic, obviously. It's a local one all day epic, actually. So it's not that hard to get, unlike say Kentro or Liko, who are only, daytime epics. You could find these at night as well. It's not super hard to get. And we just had 2 weeks of event Sinos. So we all should have a decent amount of Sino. And if you're looking to, if you're asking where to put this Sino DNA, it does have two hybrids, which are Utasinoraptor and Allosinosaurus. So let's first go over Utasino real fast. So Utahsino, legendary, 3,000 health, a lot of damage here, 127 speed, which is kind of important, I guess. 15% defense, 5% crit. And for moves, it has, this is wrong, this is strike. Actually, just normal strike. It has distracting impact, critical impact, and instant charge. So, yeah, that's Utahsino at level 26. Low health, really high damage. 127 speed is an interesting speed tier for a couple of reasons, and we're going to talk about in a second. Its armor, 15% armor, that's not bad. It helps its survivability a bit. Coupled with distracting impact and instant charge, it's probably not going to die as easily as it might seem. So let's look at its speed first. At 127 speed, it obviously outspeeds all the 126 dinos, which are kind of important, I guess. Because, like, in 126, you got Diloranosaurus here, Monometrodons here, Paramolox here, Tormalox 126, although this one isn't that important since Tormalox gets slow. Who else is here? Utarinex. This is the most important one in 126. Utarinex. Although I'm pretty sure Utarinex still wins this matchup. It's still super bulky. It can distract as well, so Utarinex although wins this one, but Utahsino has a good chance of taking it down pretty low. So yeah, that's for all the 126 matchups. Does really well against Alloranosaurus since at 127 it attacks first, and the what was the name called again? A Superiority Strike. That's only one turn of slow, so Utahsino next turn could just instant charge and regain its speed. So that's a decent matchup for Utahsino. So at 127 speed, it did get 1 point speed buff. It was 126 before, and it's in a pretty decent spot, I'd say, in the meta. So now let's go over Allosinosaurus. Allosinosaurus, another legendary, 4.5k health, 1.6k damage, 106 speed, 15% defense, and 20% crit chance. It has armor piercing impact, defense shattering impact, defense shattering strike, and instant charge. So 2 impacts and 2 strikes, just like Utasinoraptor, I believe. Yeah. So Allosinosaurus hits really hard. Despite its 2 impacts, those 2 impacts still do a lot of damage. And also has instant charge, so that's a free 1.6k damage there, in most scenarios at least. And 20% crit chance, that's pretty standard for, a large theropod, I guess. Or at least a Tyrannosaur theropod, not the megas and all that. Good amount of health. With the defense, it could take a few hits. Oh, well, actually not really, but it's not as frail as some other Tyrannosaurids. That I'm just gonna put it like that. So usually with Allosinosaurs, you're gonna go, defend shattering impact, instant charge, then armor piercing impact, then take out a dino, hopefully. But the problem with Allosino, and it is kind of look at its speed, 106 speed. 106 speed is a very, very bad speed here. The reasons are, look at all the 107s. Stegosaurus 107, Indominus 107, Tyrannolophosaurus 108, Trichosaur 108, Notapad Titan 108, Draco Gen 2 108, although, doesn't have too much problem against Draco Gen 2. Thoradolosaur 108, Thoradolosaur 109, Nontorex 109, Gigaspike 109, and then you get to the 110s and above. So among the slow dinos, 106 is a really, really bad place to be at. So that's a really big problem for Allosinosaurus. And that's why it has instant charge, so it could sort of work around that in some scenarios. And here's like Allosinosaurus. Allosinosaurus could take some hits. It dishes out a lot of damage. But the difference between Allosinosaurus and Utahsino is Allosinosaurus is more of a reliable dinosaur to use. It in most case scenarios, unless it hits its it's up against its hard counters like Utarinex and stuff like that, it should really reliably take out your opponent's dinosaur. But after that, it very likely will just get outsped by the next dinosaur your opponent throws out and takes it out really easily. And that in some case scenarios, and this is not in a lot of cases, you also get to give your opponent a setup turn on that kill. So that's one unfortunate thing about Allosinosaurus. And in comparison, Utasinoraptor is quite the opposite. Utasinoraptor, due to its speed, its moveset, how it cycles its moves. You could go Distracting Impact, Crit Impact, Instant Charge, and then come back with Distracting Impact. So that gives you more survivability. Or you could go, Distracting Impact, Instant Charge, Critical Impact, and then, Distract again, and then an Instant Charge again. So that gives it a lot more survivability. You could, either go for damage or survivability. If you go Distracting Impact, Critical Impact, and Instant Charge, that gives you a lot of damage. And then if you want more survivability, then Distracting Impact, Instant Charge, Critical Impact. It really depends on what you're facing. But Utahsino, unlike Allosino, can take out, usually, if it does take out one dino, it's probably still around for the next dino. It could at least get 1 to 2 hits on the next dino. So that's one thing that Utahsino has over Allosino. It isn't as reliable as Allosino is on taking out that first dino, but if it does take out that first dino, it very likely will get another hit or two on the next dino they throw out after that. So that's one thing Utahsino has over Allosino. And yeah, that's, I'd say, quite significant. And remember, like, Utahsino and Allosino. Allosino is a Tyrannosaurid. Utahsino's damage is only like 10 lower than Allosino, and that's pretty crazy. And it also has critical impact, so on that one turn it has a bit more crit than Allosino. So I would say, if we're comparing Utahsino with Allosino, Utahsino is a bit better here. Allosino is still really good, but I would say they function totally different roles, remember. But we're comparing these two because of the resources that we're going to be spending on. So looking at, what we use in the recipes, it's Utahsino versus Allosaurus. So these are, I would say equally as hard to get. Although one's a rare, one's common. The rare is global rare, so it appears everywhere, and the local and the Allosaurus, the common, is a local common, so you really have to be in local 3 to get some Allosaurus, or restaurants, which appears a lot. But if you do live in local 3, you should have a lot of Allosauruses. It shouldn't be too much of a problem. Both shouldn't be too much of a problem, although personally I'm short on Utahsino DNA at the moment. But yeah, these aren't too hard to get. So let's talk about their uniques, which is Utarinex and a Thoradolosaur. I wouldn't have a picture for Thoradolosaur yet, but oh well. Just have to work with that. So Utarinex, 4.2k health, 1,420 damage, 126 speed, no armor, and 5% crit. Moves are Distracting Rampage, Impact and Run, Instant Charge, and Strike. This is Strike, not Minimal Stunning Strike. And Thoradolosaur, we have 4.2k health, 1,640 damage, 109 speed, no armor, 40% crit chance, Defense Shattering Impact, Defense Shattering Rampage, Defense Shattering Strike, and Instant Charge. So, looking at these two, these are both really top tier dinos. What Utarinex, so let's compare them to their predecessor. Utarinex has a lot more HP. Doesn't have the armor, but the HP more than makes up for the armor. It has slightly less damage, base damage, but it has better multipliers. It has Distracting Rampage. That's a turn 1 Rampage with Distract. So that's a lot of survivability on this thing. This is really strong. It does like what? 2.8k damage on turn 1, and with a priority instant charge, so that's another 1.4k damage. And then, you know, Impact and Run, that has a lot of things it could synergize with. So overall, Utarinex has one of the best kits in the game. Really good stats, solid stats. 126 speed, could have been better, but you know, looking at its moves, it has nothing to worry about with the 126 speed. And now let's look at Thoradolosaur. Health, it has a bit less health, I think. Oh, no, it's the same health. Never mind. Damage, it's what, about 200 more damage. Speed, 109. That's a really good speed there. Defense, it doesn't have any armor. And a 40% crit chance. So overall, the stats look better for Thoradolosaur. Slightly. But, you know, speed is still a problem, but in comparison to Allosaurus, 109 speed is really good for the lower speed tiers. It outspeeds Trico, it outspeeds Indom, it outspeeds Stegod, it outspeeds Allosino. It's the predecessor. It outspeeds Quepilith. It outspeeds a lot of these slower dinos. It speed ties with Pteranodontorex, Giga Spike. So these are decently important matchups. So Thoradolosaur, really solid dino, 40% crit. Like, you're gonna crit like every other turn, basically. So yeah, it also gained a Rampage, so that's even more damage for Thoradolosaur. Plus, if it crits, that's a lot of damage. You're gonna be taking out a lot of dinos. So the problem with Thoradolosaur is it has a bit less survivability than Allosinosaurus. The speed might make up for it, and the crit chance does make up for it a bit. It's basically a direct upgrade from Allosinosaurus, except it just doesn't have the armor, which kind of sucks. So yeah, it's kind of the same playstyle as Allosinosaurus. You start with Impact and then Instant Charge and then go for Rampage if the dino isn't dead yet, which a lot of dinos actually do survive the Impact and Instant Charge. Even with both crits, a lot of dinos still do survive, which is unfortunate for Thoradolosaur. So yeah, Thoradolosaur, overall, really good dino. It needs Allosino plus Tarbo, which isn't too hard to get. It's a night-only global. That might be a problem if you don't go out too much at night, but if you do, it shouldn't be too much of a problem. And looking at Utarinex, that's Draco. Draco is a bit harder to get since it is a local rare. So overall, Thoradolosaur is a bit harder to make. So both these are really great dinos. But what we should be looking at is team composition. So looking at Thoradolosaur, it doesn't have as good team comps as Utarinex could fit into. Thoradolosaur, for one, it doesn't fit good into Trico and Tonanto team comps. Because if you already have Tricosaurus and Tonantorex, putting a third slow chomper really hurts your team. If you don't have enough speedy dinos to, go for either revenge kills, or if you really need to take out that one last hit on an enemy dino, these dinos don't help. Trico might help a bit actually. Tyrannosaurus, Thoradolosaur, they don't help. So more than likely, you're not going to have Thoradolosaur, Trico, and Tyrannosaurus, all three on the same team. And Trichosaurus and Tyrannosaurus are both absolute top tier dinos. So that's one limit of Thoradolosaurs. It's really hard to put Thoradolosaur on Tyrannosaurus and Trichosaurus's team. Like, if you draw all three of them, you're pretty much screwed. And even if you draw like 2 out of the 3, that's not going to be helpful either. And especially if the third dino you draw as a tank, and then you only get one dino with decent speed, you're pretty screwed. If they have like Dilorchirus, Utarinex, Erlodom, you're absolutely destroyed. Monomymus, you're screwed. So that's one problem with Thoradolosaur. Utarinex, I would say, fits in more teams. There aren't really a lot of dinos who do what Utarinex does. Like maybe Utasino to an extent, although Utasino doesn't really have the survivability. It doesn't have the utility in impact and run. So maybe not so much. Like if you compare it to, let's say, Diloranosaurus, they have similar survivabilities. And it seems like these two are a bit better if you want to compare. But obviously, Dilorano doesn't have the damage Utarinex does, and Utarinex doesn't have that cleanse distraction and one turn slow that Dilorano has. So these are a bit different. Like maybe if you have both Dilorchirus and Dilorano on your team, you could get away with not using Utarinex. But the problem is, you're probably not going to have Dilorano and Dilorchirus on the same team unless you overleveled Dilorano before Dilorchirus came out, or if you just made Dilorchirus and your team level is about level 20. So that would be a scenario where you probably don't want Utarinex on your team. But if you don't have Dilorano on your team, you have Dilorchirus on your team, and that's like the only high-speed striking dino you have, you'd probably want to put Utarinex on your team. So just there, Utarinex fits more roles than a Thoradolosaur does. Like, Thoradolosaur is so easily replaced, and well, I wouldn't say it's so easily, but obviously it does. It is a chomper. It does a lot of chomper stuff. It is for sure. It's unique. The instant charge on turn 2. That's that Trico can't do that. Tyrannosaurus to an extent could do that. But well, Tyrannosaurus doesn't stun, but you can go first on turn 2 with a really huge hit with Tyrannosaurus. And obviously those two don't have 40% crits, although Trico has a 30% crit with the 0.5 counter, which also has another 30% chance to crit. So it is unique, but it's not as replaceable as, say, Utarinex. So overall, conclusion time. Both are really good. Well, not both. All 4 of these are really good dinos. Both of the uniques are, to an extent, or largely, they're both largely an upgrade to the legendaries. Although the legendaries are still usable, they're still really good. But both of these are just slightly better. Not slightly, I'd say it. Well, at least in Utarinex's case, it's a lot better. But they're quite different, I'd say, from a Utasinoraptor. But if you really want my honest opinion on which one to go for, I would say Utarinex for now. Thoradolosaur is good. It looks cool. It looks really cool. It hits hard. And if you don't have one of the chompers, or, if you don't have the other two, which Tyrannosaurus should be really easy to make in comparison to Thoradolosaur. It's made of a common and, 2 rares? Tyrannosaurus, Rex Gen 2, and Dilo Gen 2. Although Dilo Gen 2 is hard to get. Tyrannosaurus isn't that easy to get either if you don't live in local 2. but it is slightly easier to create, I'd say, than Thoradolosaur. So yeah, there's that. Trichosaurus, obviously very, very hard to create. It uses the rarest materials in the game. So if you really don't have one of the two, you could throw in Thoradolosaur in there. Otherwise, when I'm recommending Utarinex and saying a Thoradolosaur is more easily replaced, I am going for obviously the most optimal setup, and not considering how hard it is to get Trichosaurus and Sinoceratops. Although it really isn't too hard to get Sinoceratops, but overall, I still would say use Utarinex because if you're going for a Thoradolosaur and you don't have it, and if like your only chompers, let's say, are Sinoceratops and Allosinosaurus, your slower chompers, like you would probably have to run Erlodon, which is really good, but it's it's not that easy to create, and that also takes another spot. It sounds like I'm selling Erlodom short, but Erlodom is one of the better dinos in the game at the moment. You would have to run like Erlodom. You'd have to run Dilorachirus. These two you'd have to run if you're running like Thoradolosaur with Sinoceratops. You probably still have to run Stegodeus. Spinosuchus is it should be a really good one to have on that team as well. But then if you're running Utarinex, you could get away with not running a lot of these dinos. You can get away with not running Spinosuchus. You could get away with not running Erlodom. You might get away with not running Dilorachirus. I seriously doubt that. Maybe you could almost get away with not running Indoraptor on a Utarinex team. Although I don't know why you wouldn't run Indoraptor. But, a Utarinex, it just has more flexibility on team building. So that's why. So that's my conclusion, I guess. I would recommend Utarinex over Thoradolosaur. But there are situations where Thoradolosaur are better than Utarinex. So if you do find that a situation where Thoradolosaur works better for you, by all means go for Thoradolosaur. I'm sorry for this a bit long video. I'm gonna shut up now. So yeah, that's what I feel about it. Tell me which one you guys are going for in the comments down below, and good luck getting some decent fuses on these dinos, and hopefully you all got good Sino DNA. I'll see you guys in the next video.